Welcome to the world of Rex. It is Marvel Rex. This is a bonus episode where we are going to be diving into Saturn in Aries, which just had that ingress on May 24th of 2025. I am here with an Aries in the cockpit, Sydney Baloue. Sid has been on the podcast before, but I would say this is a very different moment for you since the last time you were on the podcast. So I'm very excited to reintroduce the World of Rex listeners to you. As somebody who has an Aries stellium and a Capricorn stellium, I think you're the perfect person to talk with about this new Saturn and Aries ingress. I am wearing my LA Astrofest hat. Big shout out to Los Angeles Astrology Fest. Sid and I both went. And then Sid, take it. Oh, let me read a little bit more about Sid before we dive in. So for those who are listening and are new to Sydney Baloue, his pronouns are he, him, his, and girl with a U, girl. And now Sydney is an artist, writer, producer, actor, dancer, archivist, and journalist. Have I heard anything more Aries? Doing all the things. I love it. He was a co-executive producer on HBO Max's Legendary seasons 1 and 2. In 2022, he was the first Black trans man in the Writers Guild of America after working as a writer on The Vanishing Half for HBO and Tom Swift for the CW, RIP CW. Sid is the author of a forthcoming memoir history on ballroom culture, tentatively titled Undeniable, a history of voguing ballroom and how it changed my life and the world. He was the first trans man to solely win grand prize for Old Way at the Latex Ball in 2019. Whoa, whoa. And he is a former member of the House of Extravaganza. He is a budding student of astrology. Love that. Thank you, Sid. Who is grateful for the mentorship he has received from Marvel Rex, me, Liz Vasquez, and Vivi Henriette, as the practice has allowed him to tap into his spirituality and heal on a deeper level. Perfect. We'll also talk about Neptune and Aries. That's a great segue. Sid, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited and honored to have you back.
Marvel, I'm so excited to be here. Wait, also, have I been on the pod before? Because I was like, I thought this was my first time.
No, I think yes, you've been on the pod.
I thought
Really?
okay.
Did I make that up in my head? Did I really?
No, I know. I feel like we've talked about it, and I think we've wanted it to happen, but I love that it's happening, so I receive it.
Yes, I do think that we did years and years ago.
Oh, really? Okay, well, we're
Look,
gonna have to dig into the archive.
I looked into my archive. We did our World of Rex. We did our collab in 2022, 3 years ago.
Wow,
3 years
wow. The
ago.
pod has grown so immensely. Marvel, also congratulations to you. First
Thank
of
you.
all, it is such an honor to be on your podcast. You don't know not only how many times I listen to you in the morning, like you're part of my breakfast routine, you're part of my way to get my week going, and obviously I evangelize the hell out of you to everybody I know. So everybody should listen, and we're here.
We love Mercury and Aries. I love this. So for this moment, I just am so curious as somebody who lives with the Sun in Aries, Mercury in Aries, Venus in Aries. Am I missing any other planets? Do you have any other planets
No,
in
no,
there?
no, no.
But
Those are
like
the three.
those are the three huge. 2025 is just such a big year for you because for everybody listening, but particularly for the Aries, there's been so many retrogrades in Aries going back into Pisces. We have Neptune and Saturn there now. And I just figured, let's hear from you. And like, I want to hear about however comfortable you feel or like how much you want to share in terms of your journey since you were
Mm.
on the pod in 2022, like such a different paradigm. What's your process now? How are you feeling these new energies? I know that you've done some Capricorn homework to bring to us on the pod so we can dive more into some cultural events that resonate for this. But let's get into Saturn and Aries a little bit. Like, what is your experience and where do you want to begin?
My goodness. I mean, there's so many places to start for the listeners. I also have a Scorpio rising, and my first house Pluto placement is there as well. So, I mean, it has just been fire, fire, fire. Seriously, since the end of last year. I mean, as you know, Marvel, this is my nodal return,
Mm-hmm.
and because my North Node is in Pisces, and my gosh, I mean, it has truly been a great awakening because this is really marking about around a year that I did my first astrological predictive reading with you.
Mm.
And truly, Marvel, I cannot thank you enough. That was truly a monumental moment in my life where it turned around for the better.
Mm,
because I remember one of the number one things you told me in that reading was that I needed to tap into my spirituality, that I needed to kind of return to source in that way. And for me, it's changed everything in my life for the better. And there's so many things because number one, I mean, as you mentioned, I've been working on this book project now for 9 years. I've been in the ballroom scene for 13. And the project first started as my master's thesis when I was at the London School of Economics.
mm,
And the TLDR of my journey is that I was in Europe for 5 years, Berlin, Paris, and London. I got into the ballroom scene there, and that was the portal to my transition.
mm.
And I wanted to learn more about the history. I mean, this is so much of my Cancer, that ninth house Chiron placement that is there of learning long distances, travel, and all of that, and scholarship in that regard. But it started as a like small oral histories project. I did 9 interviews with icons, legends, pioneers in the ballroom scene in New York to just learn more about that culture and history. And since then, I mean, it's blossomed into this like entire career that I carved out for myself. First I tried to do this in a PhD at the University of Pennsylvania, where I did my undergrad. That didn't work out. And then I was like, I want to speak to more people in a broader way. And so, the big thing that launched me, and we can obviously link this in the show notes, was my realness article that I wrote for the New York Times about the realness category. And this is back in October 2019. Truly, I mean, this is my Saturn return back then, where I was talking about how the category meant a lot to me as a trans man, as a binary trans man, especially that, this idea of us cosplaying, role playing sort of different archetypes of masculinity was very liberating for me because that was what I wasn't allowed to do as a kid. And here I was able to not only cosplay, but then own that as my identity.
Can you explain the realness category just for folks who are not as aware of ballroom and maybe even just a little backup and just very quick ballroom definition and then the realness category because this is so important to the Saturn Neptune of Aries and Aries of it all. The realness
For
category is so important. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, for those who don't know, ballroom culture, it's a community that started in the Black and Latinx, very working class community in New York City. It has many starting points, but really we can pinpoint kind of like the 1970s, 80s is when it really kind of peaks in the mainstream, where you see it in a film like Paris is Burning or in Madonna's Vogue with her backup dancers, Jose and Luis extravaganza. And this culture has a competition setting where you have houses, which are kind of like teams slash chosen family that compete in different categories for cash prizes and trophies.
Mm-hmm.
You can gain different status within these communities after winning lots of trophies and lots of categories. And one of the big sort of cultural producers or really cultural vectors of the culture is the dance form that emerges from this community, which is voguing. So when you think of Madonna's Vogue, that is the culture that produced that. And obviously, since then, there have been a number of TV shows and films that highlight this, especially Pose, which was on
Mm-hmm.
FX, and of course, the show that I produced, Legendary on HBO Max.
Amazing. And the realness category, this is so interesting based on your own journey as a trans man, but also as we enter Saturn and Neptune co-present in Aries, Aries being all about identity and what is a valid identity, what is a real identity. Realness is very fun because it has a Neptunian component. Will you share more about the realness category?
Yeah, so realness, I mean, what's so great about it, speaking of foundations and beginnings, well, first of all, number one, the founding mother of ballroom culture, Crystal LaBeija, I found out was an Aries sun. I know, and I found this
You
out
can't
from
make it up.
Marlo.
You can't make
You
it
really
up.
can't. I mean, and she's very important to mention because realness, the idea of realness is the idea. At first, it began with trans people portraying archetypes of cis straight society, but specifically passing as straight and cis. And this is very foundational to ballroom because when balls first began in New York City, even dating back to the 19th century, it was about sort of playing with gender in this kind of way: who's a man, who's a woman, because the culture actually really has those roots back to masquerade balls that fraternal societies used to host. The first Black one was held by the Hamilton Lodge in Harlem.
Wow.
And these events were huge. I mean, they would draw thousands of people. And by the 1920s, during the Harlem Renaissance, this is really when it peaks, and you see it in the newspapers. And these were really big events because they brought people together from different backgrounds who otherwise would never commingle. So
That's
Black people, white people, poor people, straight people, cis, you go down the list. And since then, the culture grew exponentially. And by the time you get to kind of like the late 1960s or even 70s, the competition becomes mainly a focus on trans women and trans men, because trans men are oftentimes the drag kings are often left out of the history, but they were there as well.
okay.
People like Stormy Blarvery, they also were doing male impersonation. But back then, drag, as we knew it, was known as female impersonation. And the idea was that you're portraying the art of being a woman or the art of being a man. And so that tradition has carried on in the culture and expanded to other gender and sexual identities. So, for butches in the 80s, it used to be called male illusionist. The
Mm,
idea that you're creating, I know, so Neptunian, right? Like you're creating this illusion of what it means to be a man through the way that you portray, this archetype. And that means your outfits, that means the way you carry yourself. And so the competition then becomes the judges are choosing, okay, who is the most believable man? Who is the
yeah.
most believable woman? And that carried on, as I said, as the categories expanded to include more gender and sexual identities, this is how you get butch queens or gay and bisexual men, again, portraying straight characters of what it means to be a man. So, yeah, that's realness for you.
Fascinating. And I would say I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh my gosh, Sid, it seems to me, I'm hearing you and I'm like, at this point, you've been doing research on Neptune and Aries for the last however many years, like almost a decade plus. Like you've been doing research on the art. When you said the art of being a woman or the art of being a man, like the word art is so associated with Neptune because it's about this sort of illusory, ephemeral, momentary experience of realness,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I just love that you're here to transmit to people, hey, I've been really researching this, by the way, and
I
and I
mean,
lived it. Yeah.
yeah, I was even gonna say, like, when you told me, because I mean, just for folks who are watching, with Marvel, because I was like, Marvel, what do I wear? Yeah, because I knew there would be a video component, and Marvel's like something military, and I thought, oh God. But then luckily, of course, I had walked a category where I had all this military gear, and then I was like, bitch, I'm gonna serve. At the end of the day, I'm a ball girl, baby. So I'm already giving you realness, right? We're in the cockpit. I'm wearing my outfit. I don't know if you can even
Aries,
see my
it's so
Aries
good.
details. Yes,
I'm
this
I'm
is
I'm starting to notice it. I'm like the Aries glyph on the top.
Yes, all of the above. So, to your point, yeah, what's so interesting about realness, I mean, especially this is the interesting thing about this category. One, it's a word that often gets abused in sort of like regular parlance because realness is both about being quote unquote fake, because the idea that society says, right, if you're assigned a certain gender,
Mhm.
right, that is the sex that you have, right? If you have certain genitalia, it means one thing, but the idea with realness is that no, we're portraying, right? We're giving you this theater of sorts, a
Mhm.
performance of gender.
Mhm.
But the irony is that that is who we actually are. So
Mm.
it's both about authenticity of yourself as a person, because for me, I'll say this, the portal to my transition was back in 2015 when I walked my first realness category. It was Butch Realness in Paris. It was a back to school ball hosted by this guy Charlie Ebony at the time. I know. And the irony too, this is what's so interesting. It's like my visa was delayed because I had done this dual degree master's program in urban planning, 1 year at Sciences Po in Paris, the second year at the London School of Economics. I was supposed to be in London, but my visa was delayed, and then this ball was happening. I thought, well, I might as well walk this ball. And this is back when I identified as a butch lesbian. The category was butch realness. I had to bring it like a racaille, which in French means like a thug bad boy.
Okay.
And I used to box at this one gym that was like outside of the city limits, kind of the hood, but there's
But
no real hoods in.
I'm also like Scorpio rising with Pluto in the first house. You can do bad boy thug. That's not a problem. You're like, sign me
even,
up. I can do that. Yeah.
even though when I look back at the photos, I mean, this is my tweak era. I was a lot lighter back then, and I also think French masculinity allows you to get away with that. But I knew the aesthetic, which in Paris at the time was like, sweatpants, white socks pulled up, either like Puma shoes or I had these Adidas ones. I had my UPenn sweatshirts because I went there for my undergrad and a Bears bomber jacket. And
Love it.
I talked to my house mother at the time, and she was like, "All right, Sid, put your hood up and then start walking down the runway, and then when you get to the middle, pull back the hood for the reveal."
Mhm.
And for me, Marvel, what's so interesting is I'm such an Aries. I just wanted to win this category because my house mother, because I hadn't won. I mean, I was walking old way voguing, right? The original style of voguing, but I hadn't won anything. And they were like, "This is your category. This is for you." Because there weren't many butches in the Paris scene back then. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna rock this. So, I get to the end of the runway. And what was so interesting is I didn't even start walking and people were applauding for me. And for me, this was a moment of gender euphoria
Mm,
down
mm,
because my whole life growing up, I grew up in a house of girls. I have an older sister, younger sister. It was my mother, my aunt lived with us for a period of time, and just my dad. And I was berated my entire life for my masculinity. I
mm,
was taught that everything that was butch about me was bad. Also, there was even an element of anti-black racism in my home too. So, I had broader, bigger lips, thicker thighs, whatever. Everything was bad. And even though I seemed to be this like arrogant, Aries person, I still held this sense of like shame around my masculinity. And so here I was on this runway at this nightclub in Paris, where finally all those things I was told that were wrong about me were motherfucking right. And I remember when I hit the middle of the runway and I pulled back my hood, just the way people went up for me, even the judges. And the Paris girls are shady ladies. Okay, they're already Parisian, and bitch, then their ballroom. It's like shade upon shade, darling, But even they were like applauding, standing up. And I was like, oh my God, I'm finally the person I've wanted to be. And, I think for what was so interesting is when I was in London, this is actually when I started my social and medical transition, because I remember that feeling of elation and thinking, okay, can that only exist in the ball or can that exist in real life? And I knew trans men at the time. There were a couple folks in London who were, doing community work and who were very active. Um, but I'll never forget when I did my like medical intake because I was trying to go the private route to access HRT hormones. The doctor, I was telling him the story of walking realness. He told me for a lot of trans people, it's often those moments of cosplay where we discover our true selves. And the joke with a lot of my trans girlfriends is, every Halloween a trans girl is born, right? That's the key. But that's because in these moments, these liminal spaces, Halloween is one, ballroom is one, Comic
Carnival.
Con, Carnival, drag. These moments are the carnivalesque, right? Where the rules of society are suspended for a brief period, right? Where we can do whatever we want. I mean, that's the nature of these masquerade balls in the 19th century is that they offered Victorian era people a moment to just suspend all these tight rules so that people could, mix gender or again, mix race with people,
Yes.
right? You would hook
Yes.
up with somebody who you normally wouldn't.
Yep.
We see this also in the history of nightclubs, right? Like the mega nightclubs that used to exist in New York City were so monumental because they brought people together who would otherwise never mix, right? And it's in those spaces that you're able to dream in that Neptunian way and really dream about your identity. Who am I in this space, right? When it's not about my mom or my dad or what society is telling me, but really what's coming from within, right?
Mhm.
This is that space. And obviously, as I said, for me, that was the portal to my transition, and the rest is history because it was just like, okay, this is possible, and mind you, I'm kind of dating myself. This is back in like 26. Well, I was in London in 2015 to like, and I left in 2017. So, I'm not like the early end of transmasculine, transition because I feel
Sure.
like, hormones were already accessible. There were
Sure.
some people who were visible.
Yep.
For me, it was especially about Teak Milan, who was
Oh
very
yeah.
visible at the
Oh yeah.
time.
Oh yeah.
And then I would also say get a special shout out to Seven King,
Oh
who
yeah.
was this black trans guy from the ballroom scene who had this little web series called Eden's Garden. And,
Hmm.
I remember it was the first time I had seen in critical mass like black and brown trans men,
Yep.
some who were straight, who had queer relationships with cis men, and, just a wide range of things. I mean, the acting was, the
I
editing,
know. I know. I
but,
know.
but this is the thing. It was about visibility
Yes.
and seeing a possibility model.
Yep.
And the reason I bring this up, Marvel, and of course, we can get into my diva discussion that I really want to discuss at some point.
Yes.
But when I think of Aries, obviously it's like we are the babies of the zodiac. We're just learning. This is also why I don't like the abuse that we always get from so many different folks, because I think that we're oftentimes misunderstood.
Yes. Yes. It's an
And
archetypal quality of Aries too, though. That's the underdog component. Is like there's a fundamental like, oh, I'm too much. Well, let me show you. I'm gonna even go even farther. But people can get well. Yeah, we'll break this down. I think this is so
But
deep.
yeah,
Continue.
yeah, because one thing I want to say is I think sometimes people think Aries is about hypermasculinity. However, I would like to reframe this and quote Sam Reynolds, one of the wonderful astrologers who was there at the Astrofest. Shout out
Yes.
to him. He's based in Santa Fe, an incredible gentleman, brilliant mind. And one of the things he said is instead of using gendered language like feminine, masculine, he actually discusses the signs as some are assertive
Yep.
and some are more receptive.
Yep.
And I loved this because, I mean, I truly feel like I get a lot of abuse, and there's a lot of unfortunate misandry that
Yeah.
happens, I think, in the
Yeah.
astrology world,
Yeah.
where it's like these feminine hagiographies about, everything Venusian or, whatever. And then it's just like misandry fest for anything related to my chart.
For Scorpio,
Scorpio,
Capricorn,
Harry, yeah.
Aries.
It's just like bash centric. And I get it. It's like many of us have been harmed. Yes.
Yeah.
However, hurt people, and that does not mean that you have the right to do that. So one of the things though, when I think of Aries, and I was thinking a lot about the Aries Sun placement people who have impacted me, I think of the divas.
Mhm.
People forget all of the divas who have given us passion,
Yes.
music. And this is not even an exhaustive list. Celine Dion, Aretha Franklin, Diana Ross, Shaka Khan, Lady Gaga. I include Elton John and Lil Nas X in the mix, and of course Mariah Carey, who I have a lot to say about today. And this is the and a big one. I don't even know. Selena, the OG Quintanilla,
Oh
also an
yes.
Aries. Yes, yes. And here's the thing, Marvel. This is the gag. Are any of these people hyper masculine? No. Like the thing is, they are assertive, right?
Yep.
And that is what it means to be a diva. Diva used to be a pejorative term,
Yep.
right, for being a
Yep.
woman who knows what she
Too much.
wants and
Yeah.
asks
Too much.
too much and asking for it. But however, when you go back, first of all of these women and men impacted music in astronomical ways. They were
Yes.
pioneers in their field for so many different things,
Yes.
and one of my favorite divas, I always think about Diana Ross when we talk about possibility models. When Diana Ross and the Supremes were on TV in 1963 on the Ed Sullivan Show, literally Oprah, Whoopi Goldberg, RuPaul, they all talk about the fact that it was there was no representation of Black women being glamorous and beautiful at that
And
time.
taking up space, which is another Aries thing. Taking up space, being like, I am here. I have
I am
arrived.
I have arrived. And literally they many of the and you can look up so many different interviews where people talk about this. Just seeing Diana Ross on TV was a possibility model of my life can be something different.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember that this is Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
This is, just like
Mm-hmm.
the worst of the worst as far as racism is
Yep.
concerned.
60s.
And here was a Black woman from the Brewster Projects in Detroit, Michigan, who dared to do great, incredible things. And I say this too because I mean, number one, I grew up on Diana Ross. My dad was a huge fan. He grew up on the South Side of Chicago. Motown was everything.
Yep.
But I saw her live at the Hollywood Bowl and also at SoFi for a festival. And you just think about, like, my goodness, this woman, like, we are like this song came out yesterday, which tells you how groundbreaking it was.
Yep.
How many decades, eras did she do? And she's not the only one. I mean, again, Lady Gaga. breaking boundaries. I mean, even her album right now, my goodness, 2.5 million
Million.
people in Brazil
Yep.
were, singing Abracadabra.
And I was watching her on SNL recently when she hosted and performed. Like that's the other thing about Aries that we need to talk about is like the incredible amount of energy that this sign has.
Yes.
I will also
Pa-
just point out that like Scorpio risings too, these Mars world signs, like Taylor Swift is a Scorpio rising, Lana
oh
Del
yeah.
Rey, right? Like this incredible Martian energy of like I will execute because she performed as a comic during SNL, but then when she did her actual music, the way she was moving her body in that cage with all the dancers, I was like, this woman has the energy of 50 people. Like,
Yes, yes, yes. And it's incredible considering what she's also been through. She's had her own
yes,
transformation. And, I mean, especially when I think about Lady Gaga, I mean, all of these people I'm naming, again, they are pioneers in their field. It's oftentimes the first time. I mean, when Lady Gaga hit the scene, I was talking to a friend about this. 2009, it was a revelation
it was.
because she, like for millennials, I
Yes.
mean, she really represented us on an artistic level in a whole new way. The meat dress, I mean, she made the Met Gala relevant again. No shade, and you can point to Selena. Selena, my God, the
Selena.
boundaries she broke, literally not even speaking Spanish natively, learning it so she could sing it,
Yep.
and then conquering so much of the world, showing, hey, Latinos have a space in the music business in the United States of America and the freaking world,
Yep.
and that she could sing in English and Spanish, and that she, did so many things. Again, I could go down the list. Elton John, so
Yeah.
groundbreaking as an artist, and it just keeps going. So, I say that because again, the assertiveness gets confused with aggression. The
Mm-hmm.
assertive, the what we need to remember is it's about passion,
Yeah.
and I say this because all of these divas, the music they gave us, the moments they all gave us, these are the moments of our lives. You play that music at weddings, funerals,
Yep.
bar mitzvahs, at school dances, when you're going through a hard time, you play that music and it
Yes.
helps you process, it helps you grieve, it helps you celebrate,
Yes.
and that's the thing. It's like, this is what these people gave us. And we have to kind of look at Aries through that lens
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying, oh no, it's this, super toxic masculine time that's coming. It's like, no, 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 no. This is a time for you to tap into who are you,
Yes.
right? What is the talent and the passion you have to give to the
Mm-hmm.
world? As far as the Saturn end of it, to me, this is about the work, baby.
Yep.
Because the Neptune side, yeah, where are your dreams? How do you want to dream big? How do you want to, change the world, change yourself,
Yep.
right? But then the Saturn part is, okay, it's time to put in the motherfucking work,
Yep.
baby.
Yep.
And that means showing up. I mean, for me, I have it in my sixth house. So it truly is about my daily practices every day.
Yes.
Every day I show up for myself. I mean, for me, I restarted the artist way.
Yep.
That's like a big thing.
Great plug, actually. Artist Way is a great plug for Saturn and Aries. Yes, and Neptune and Aries co-present.
Yes, because it's about, again, what are my dreams? What am I creating? Because I will say I felt really stalled during this Neptune and Pisces era, right? I mean, for me, for folks who don't know, it's like I've been working on this book project. I sold this book back in 2022, thinking I'm top of the world. Okay, I have all these great big dreams. And mind you, this project has been going forever. It feels, again, that's my Mars and Gemini, good Lord, in the eighth house, where
Yeah.
woo, I got to collect all the data, but it's like, maybe we
Yeah.
got to do the project too. We got to like birth this baby, and I just felt really stalled, and I truly, I felt like I got lost in the sauce. I mean, Marvel and I, we had talked because I'd lost my book deal literally a year ago around this time, and so much of it was that there was so much that I needed to heal
Yes.
within myself,
Yes. Yes. This
and
is an
I
important point of the Aries, actually. I want to just note that what your story about you walking ball and realness in Paris and having that euphoric moment is actually a perfect, to me, it's a perfect allegory for the process of what Neptune and Saturn are doing together for the first 3 years of this transit, which is getting lost to get found.
mm,
Right, like you had to get lost to get found, and like that's also how that works. Like we have to press into the edges of Neptune, we have to press into these liminal spaces where we don't have all the answers. Like you didn't have all the answers when you walked that ball. You were like, okay, like I want to win this, but like I don't know what this is going to mean for me, and you had no idea that you were going to have like a quantum breakthrough, and you got
yes,
found. And that's also Saturn, because then all of a sudden Saturn comes in and says, okay, your life's changed, You now have to get on hormones. You now have to, so for you, you had to do all the work. Now it's a deeper level of healing that I see you doing, which is so beautiful. And what I want to just let listeners know is like these things take time. Like Saturn literally is Chronos, aka time. Like the healing journey is time. Yes, I think we're in an accelerated timeline right now with Aries. So I love you in your camo being like, it's time to do the work because it is time
Yes.
right now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, Marvel, that is such a wonderful way of putting this because I was looking back at my notes from the Astrofest. Sam might have said this that, with each zodiac, we kind of respond or we like do, what is it like? We kind of do cleanup work for the previous sign.
Correct.
And I feel like Pisces, yeah, it was about the big dreaming moment.
Yep.
And then Aries is about truly taking action.
And
Um,
directional is so important. What you just
yes.
did, because like Pisces is not this. Pisces is like, and I'm gonna take a nap. Oh, I'm gonna wake up. Oh, this is how I've been undoing myself. Oh my God, this is what's getting in my way. Mental health is associated with Pisces in such a big way. And Aries
Yeah.
is like, okay, now we have to move. What's so beautiful about all the archetypes you just brought in, Lady Gaga, Diana Ross, Elton John, these people, even when like Gaga was struggling with mental health, like even when they were struggling, they were like, and I'm still putting out content. I'm still putting myself out there. And there's an element of grit that I think is also associated with Aries, which is like, yeah, I might be burning inside and I'm going to proclaim something
Yes.
passionately.
Yes, yes, I'm going to work through it
Yeah.
because I think, for me, to your previous point, like what's so interesting, what I had to reckon with truly was yes, I may have become the man I wanted to be on the outside, but I was not the man I wanted to be inside. And that was the tea that you spooked because you saw, Sid, your spirituality, you need to do some karmic cleanup on the inside.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I didn't realize was like, ooh, how am I actually showing up? Because sure, aesthetically, yeah, I'm binary, I pass, I'm finally living the life that 12-year-old me didn't even think was possible. However, how was I treating people? How was I treating myself?
Yeah.
So poorly.
Yeah.
I mean, just candidly, I had to like quit weed. Like I was like smoking a little too much. That California sober, it got way too much to me. I also needed to clean up my spirituality. I started going to Al-Anon.
Yeah.
That was like my big wake up call.
Saturn
Was
and
realize,
Pisces. Saturn and Pisces too is very
uh,
yep, structure. Yep.
structure, but specifically, I mean, for me, really like my tower card moment a year ago. And what's so crazy, and I really have to say this, especially for folks who have not booked with Marvel yet, please book an astrological predictive reading with him because he is brilliant. And I'm so serious. You totally changed everything about my life for the better, Marvel. And I'm so grateful for you because we did that reading early in May of 2024. And what was interesting was I remember one of the things you said was like, Sid, you need to kind of get back into your body, try and do a somatic practice, even go see a shaman. And I remember when I played the Zoom call back, I was like a shaman and being like, are there shamans in 2025? And of course, we're in LA, so it's like, girl, there are many shamans. But I remember I hit you up for a referral because I was like, I want to get the right one. And, I saw this incredible person, Michelle, who's based out of Malibu. And what was crazy is I had booked her well in advance. And I saw her the day after I lost my book deal. Like literally, again,
The universe opening up.
synchronicity very much. And one of the many things we began to unpack was my childhood.
Mhm.
Because the thing was, yeah, I was in ballroom. Yes, I cerebrally, and again, Aries were ruled by the head. So, I will drop all this knowledge on you, but it's like, will I be in my body to actually feel what the feelings are or really like examine that, And that's even exacerbated by my Capricorn moon,
Yeah.
which is like, I have feelings. Is that what those things are? I know. I know. Thank God for writing. But I remember with Michelle, one of the big things we looked at was, because I was telling her about my bomb career, telling her about my transition. And one of the things that was so interesting was I remember I told her about this moment of walking realness. And she was like, why was that moment so important to you? And that's when it clicked for me. Oh, ballroom gave me the light
Mhm.
because as a child, I was in the dark.
Mm.
I was the kid in the shadows. I was the one that my mom was embarrassed to show people because I was the little butch girl, the little tomboy, right before trans kids existed in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
And you know, my older sister, she was the girly girl cheerleader. She was my mother's golden child. I was the scapegoat. And I realized like, oh my gosh, that platform ballroom gave me the light that I wanted. And actually, that is what ballroom culture is for so many people who live in the shadows.
Yes.
People of color, working class people, people living with HIV, trans women, trans men.
Yep.
You go down the list,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And that's when it kind of clicked for me because I think I will say this. I mean, I come from a relatively privileged background. I grew up very middle class. I grew up in the suburbs. Yes, I had two parents. That does not mean it was hunky dory.
Nope. And that doesn't, and for a lot of people, that it applies to a lot of people. Yes, correct.
A
Yeah.
ton of people. I
Mhm.
mean, child, we are all in Al-Anon, and you don't know what's going on in the back end of most people, you know. And
Yes.
I will say that that experience of joining this community has been incredibly not only humbling, but has really given me more empathy
Yes.
because, you know, I see the South Node in Virgo, right? This moment of us letting go of
Yes.
all of this nitpicking around identity politics
Yes.
as if this says anything about who people are on an
Yes.
individual level.
Yes.
Like those things that we learned from Black Lives Matter, from the Me Too movement, et cetera. Yes, these are important tools to understand institutional systems of
Yes.
oppression.
Yes.
However, they do not define individual human beings. And we need to get back to really that one to one again in that Aries way. Who am I? Who are you? You know,
Yes.
who are we in relation to each other? And
Yes.
let's see eye to eye to try and like build a better world. Again, that Aries Neptune idea. And truly, the Saturnian nature of it is, like you said, it's gonna take time. This is
Gonna take
not
time.
something that's gonna get fixed overnight. Like there's so much to do.
Yes.
So I just wanted to mention that because it was a very eye-opening moment, and for me, just totally, it's like I literally look at it as like I was doing excavation because I got this big grant for the New York Public Library. Obviously, got this book advance money. I was doing this external physical excavation.
Yes.
I was in New York doing oral histories. I have over 50 oral histories banked, doing archival work in the New York Public Library. But then I needed to do the internal excavation of who is Sydney Baloue? Who am I? Where do I come from? How did I arrive into this culture? What is my place in it? And like again, like the universal story, of my story, which I realize more and more, because I didn't quite believe this in the beginning that like who would want to hear my story as a black trans guy? I'm just so used to being
Yeah.
ignored. I'm so
Yeah.
used to,
Yeah.
people just kind of, being like, well, you don't have a right to be here.
Mhm.
I think this is a major issue in the
It is.
LGBTQ plus
It
community
is.
in
It
general.
is.
You and I talk about this
Yeah.
nonstop
Where
about the
there's masculine phobia. There's sort of mask phobia for sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Men are toxic baseline. This is causing a whole issue, including the manosphere. It's reinforcing the manosphere. And so yeah, this is huge, what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But then, at the end of the day, it's like so many of our stories, again, are just so universal. This idea of being seen, this
Yes.
is so fundamental.
Yes.
And it really has opened me up to the power of an individual story, of my individual story, and how that can relate to other people. And again, like, I see this as being my purpose and my path. I see, especially, as it relates to my chart. I mean, we've talked about this with my fourth house. I see an Aquarius of,
Hmm.
all of that stuff that's under the hemisphere of like that I need to excavate and I need to
Hmm.
heal, and that is the solve that I can, share with others so that they can, heal themselves. Because,
And it's so interesting, just a tiny TLDR on your chart, which is just that, Aquarius is your fourth house cusp, which the fourth house for everybody, right? If you're reading your own chart, the fourth house has to do with your lineage, your family, what, like the definition of family with a capital F. The fact that Aquarius is the sign sitting there for you makes me feel like, oh, part of your work in this world is to actually, especially over the next 20 years, is to bring a sense of family universally. Like everyone can be part of the family. That's ballroom. I mean, ballroom is like, okay, ballroom's all family system. It's literally a kinship family system that you're like, and you can be your freaky weird self, Aquarius, within this kinship system. So like it's the work that you're doing and will continue to do over these next couple decades, like feels like exactly that. It's beautiful. Like especially for
Hmm.
folks who, most of us have complicated relationships to our blood family. So like
Hmm.
offering up this different space, like it's so beautiful where people can get lost and then get found.
Yes. And you know, Marvel, it's so interesting you say this because I've been thinking about this. I think one thing that has amazed me, because I used to think this was unique to us as trans people, right? Like we've always heard, the idea of chosen family is something I think, especially for us millennials, like I feel like timing wise, I mean, I came out first as a lesbian in college in 2007, right? This is the time of like marriage equality and,
Mm-hmm.
gay adoption and that whole discourse and Will and Grace on
Yep.
TV and things like that. And I remember I first learned that term family. It was like one of my queer gay cis friends who would be like, oh, she family, right?
Yep.
Or,
Yep.
that's my sister, or like your trans mother, right? Like we already use these terms. I am amazed that now straight people are
Yes.
realizing actually the nuclear family model, this ain't it. This idea of like, oh, the purpose of my life is just to get married, have a mortgage, and have kids, work till I die, and like, maybe eventually retire if I'm lucky because there is no social security. It's like everybody has woken up to the fact that like
We
this
need each
ain't
other.
it.
We need each other.
We need each other, and you need to define for yourself
Hmm.
who your family, who your chosen family is. And I say this because I was talking to one of my Al Anon homies, straight cis guy, about it. And again, part of that healing is understanding like, yeah, many of us have been hurt by our families of origin.
Mhm.
And it's up to us to decide who the people are who are in our inner circle, who are our chosen family. So again, the universality, I truly think like queer trans folks, we are truly like the pioneers of
Yep.
so many
Yep.
systems of healing that the world needs on a massive scale. Whether it's this idea of like chosen family and how to define that for ourselves, or again, our identities, right? Like our sexualities,
Hmm.
so on and so forth. I even think about it in terms of our health.
Yes.
Like I was so lucky to be able to go to Calum Lord in New York
Mhm.
City,
Mhm.
which is kind of like our LA LGBT Center
Yep.
or, Men's Health Foundation, AHF, et cetera. That is how healthcare should be in this country,
Yes.
where you can get affordable healthcare. You don't need health insurance. You could
Yep.
walk into a clinic. You should be able to get tested for STIs and be
Yep.
knowledgeable about all this stuff. It's just like, there are like levels to what I'm seeing now on the other side of things is the true relevance and importance of the story that I'm telling about the
Yes.
community and also about my personal story within that too.
Yeah. I'm getting so many pings here and I'm like kind of blown away because this whole conversation and what you're sharing so generously feels almost like a PSA to me for people around doing the work to locate themselves right now. Like literally doing the Saturn and Aries. You don't have to be perfect. It can be messy. You and I have both shown that like we externally became the man or the masculine person that we wanted to be, but there is such an internal process. And I want to offer that to all the listeners right now that take steps. Like that's Aries. Like you and I took a huge risk when we transitioned. Like I didn't, this was before, for me, it was way before trans was on the cultural radar. So like I didn't know what my life was going to look like. I thought I was going to lose all my friends. And that was the truth
Mm-hmm.
of my experience. That didn't happen. And I took a huge risk. I didn't have the answer, which Aries is not concerned with the answers. That's Capricorn's job, Virgo's job, that's other people's job.
We're also the babies. I want to bring this up because as a baby, you're just trying things, right?
You're
Like
putting things in
I,
your
I
mouth.
yeah, I literally, it's funny, Marvel. I literally was thinking, remember the early days of YouTube where there'd be those babies eating lemons videos? We are the babies eating lemons, where we don't know anything about it. We put it in our mouth and then we have to learn the hard way. Sometimes life is bitter and don't put everything in your mouth.
Mouth. And I will just to give to, my Aquarius here is always going to bring it back to the collective, but and like I hope people are really listening to you right now, Sid, as a person who's embodying the archetype of Aries your whole life. This is the work is to like, especially 2025 through 2028, we're putting lemons in our mouth. We then know, oh, I don't, or maybe I like lemons, but like that's not, I don't want that in my mouth, or I love that in my mouth. But I understand more directionally what is authentic to me so that, and you and I have been talking about this, so that we can develop compassion for everybody else on their journey. When I transitioned, all of a sudden within like the first 2 years, I was like, wow, I have so much compassion for men. Whereas before I transitioned, I was like, what are they doing? What are they doing? And then I transitioned and was like, oh my God, they're humans like everybody else, and their hormones are doing things that it's very hard to understand if you're not in that hormonal situation. So part of trans and queer people's work is we're like bridging for everybody. We're rainbow bridges. We're like, hey, here's the connection. We're actually all connected. We're living the connection. We're living the bridge.
Yes, and I'm going to use a Marvel. We learn how to turn those lemons sometimes into lemonade, into lemon meringue pie, and that is the alchemy.
Yeah.
That's the Marvel word that I learned because you use this word a lot, which I appreciate, which is like, what do you do with the pain? What do you do with the suffering, the hurt? Well, you don't just bottle it up and let it shoot out where you want. No, you learn from it, right? You grow from it. Sometimes that's the fertilizer for the next stage of life. And again, to your point, like, yeah, I gained so much empathy for, and not only men, but white, cis, straight men. Because like I said, you don't know people's backstories. I think like I truly have reined in that idea that okay, the worst people on this earth because just the way that people talk about folks, you just don't know what's going on, and people are trying to do their best a lot of the times,
Yes, I
and
agree.
sometimes it's just about education. It's just
Yes,
about again
yes.
getting to know the person because I know myself. I think I'm like the first trans guy, at least consistently at this Al-Anon group. For some people, that's probably their first time meeting a trans person, or trans man.
They're so
And
lucky. They're so lucky.
you read my bio, darling. It's the first of a lot of things. Like that is, and I don't do that on purpose.
Yeah, it's
Because
your
when you,
Aries.
it's
Yeah,
my nature. But
yeah.
also Marvel, to your point when you're saying like you were afraid of losing friends, my thing was I was afraid of just being a complainer because
Mm,
my perception of trans people back then was like, oh,
we're
I don't
victims.
want to. Yeah, I don't want to complain. I don't want to be that person who's always on Facebook, who's always on social media, complaining about everything. I was like, that's not who I am. And
Mm,
then obviously, it's like going through it, I've experienced so much transphobia at
oh
every
yeah.
stage,
Oh yeah.
academia, Hollywood,
Oh yeah.
ballroom,
Oh yeah.
even.
Oh yeah.
And, that's why, obviously I call on the divas. And then I also call on all of our ancestors, trans sisters, who brought us here. Sylvia Rivera, like I said, Crystal, all of these,
Flawless,
trans women,
flawless Sabrina.
flawless Sabrina. I mean, literally all the mothers, all the even fathers, like these people, especially like Stormy. I've been thinking a lot about Stormy a lot lately because she was very close with Marlo
Mm,
LaFantastique, who was a trans woman who's a friend of both mine and Zachary's. And she was a LeBeige in the 1960s, and she was close with Stormy because they
mm,
performed together
mm.
too. And the Butches who just faced so much oppression, lit crap beaten out of them, or being sexually assaulted by cops in the 1960s. I mean, there's so much stuff we take for granted that like Butches did, like even just wearing pants in
Yep.
public,
Yep.
which was considered cross-dressing in the 60s. Like if
It
you are
was
a cis
correct.
woman and
Correct.
you wear jeans today, you better thank a fucking lesbian for that because no, seriously, like it's crazy. Like it's
It's so
but like
real. It's so
but it's
real.
but it's true. And I say this, Marvel, because I will also say this. Back in 2019, when it was Stonewall 50 in New York, one of my friends, Shane O'Neill, did this piece for the New York Times about, myth busting around Stonewall. And there was always this question, who was the first to throw the first brick at Stonewall?
Yeah.
And one of the things that they found was like, there's all these like kind of cross stories, but the one truth that everyone could agree upon was that the riot started going, like people started fighting back against cops when
Mm,
a butch lesbian resisted arrest. Nobody knows the name of this person, but it was a butch who did it. And what gags me is
I'm not
when,
surprised. I'm not
no, I
surprised.
mean, none of us are surprised,
Like,
right?
no, yeah, that makes
It's
sense.
often a butch. It was, the Audrey Lords of the world who are like, hey, something ain't right, right? But what bothered me was instead of going, yeah, we should honor that person, the attitude was, well, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Instead of giving a hagiography, yes, I love my trans women friends, I love my sisters, but we need to give some acknowledgement
Yep.
to our trans brothers, to our butch, friends, because we are oftentimes the silent, majority who is doing so much of the emotional work,
Yep.
So much of this labor that keeps these movements going, and we're barely, if ever, getting any acknowledgement or credit for our work because we're not the face of the movement who instead. So, that's another thing is like, again, to that Aries, Saturnian, Neptunian idea, be seen,
Yes.
make yourself
Yes.
visible.
Yes.
Yes, you are doing the work and you deserve all the credit that you should get for the work that you're producing because it's very important to keep movements and keep our communities alive and going.
One thing I want to say about Neptune and Aries that's so beautiful to that point is how do we make, not to reduce Aries to masculinity, but how do we make masculinity beautiful again? Like there's something about that where it's like, how do we actually, because Neptune is about what the collective is kind of entranced by, like,
Mm,
woo, when it enters Aries, I think we're going to see a lot around even just military garb. But we're also going to see a psychedelic relationship to the assertive, to the masculine, to these sort of um, codes. And I think it's going to be really beautiful. I actually feel really optimistic. Not obviously there's going to be a whole arc, but I feel optimistic about the way it's going to be transforming and how people are going to be more in touch with the I would just say the suspension of their identities, plural. Like you and I are talking like we know who
mm,
we are, but it's also like you and I are different depending on whatever context we're in. Being able to have I constantly practice when I find aspects of myself that feel challenging or provoking to me and I know are not totally integrated, like they feel a little shadowy.
mm,
Part of my work is I'm like, okay, I want to make friends with this. What is this?
mm,
Like there's an and I've that was my Kabbalistic, my Jewish mystical mentor was like make friends with the they use the word like demon. They use like kind of intense words, but like make friends with the shadow, make friends with the parts of yourself that feel contradictory, messy, unintegrated, because that's actually the work. The moment you start to create intimacy with all the aspects of who you are, there's a lot less violence in your life and other people feel inspired, which I think you're doing right now on this podcast. Thank you, Sid. Feel
mm,
inspired to take their own road and their own journeys and getting lost, taking the wrong, putting the lemon in the mouth and being like, I'm going to turn around and go that way. Like that is the beauty. I was going to say this at the top. The beauty of Aries to me in a lot of ways is the ability to pivot, but continue moving. It's like,
mm.
because you've done that. You've been like, oh, okay, boom, and I'm moving this way. I did the PhD, didn't quite work, going that way. Like, I have strong Aries in my chart too, and I feel like part of my job is like I'm just sensing on a very sensory level where, when, and where I need to pivot so that I can continue to shine.
Mm. Yes, yes. I love this. I love this because, I mean, I told you, and I will plug. I do have I would even say I called it a Saturn and Aries playlist, but I would even say Neptune and Saturn because
They're
it's
together.
all the divas, right? And it's funny because I started watching a bunch of these YouTube videos. Like I was watching Selena at the Astrodome,
Mm-hmm.
iconic moment of all of her iconic spins in that purple, strappy number that she wears. And
Mm-hmm.
I think about that idea of dreaming that big and
Mm-hmm.
then executing
Mm-hmm.
that dream. And for anyone who's done anything in their lives, yeah, it's not going to go perfectly, right? Because that's also the Virgo South Node that we got
Yep.
to get rid of is
Release.
this
We're
idea of
releasing. Yep.
we're releasing that perfectionism, right? And we're embracing what is. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the big things like I've learned in Al-Anon is it's like I can put that intention out there, but I can't, I don't get to control how it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything, we shouldn't control how it happens because sometimes your dreams can unfold in incredibly spectacular ways. I mean, literally, I left a super transphobic PhD. It was so heartbreaking, honestly, Marvel, to leave UPenn, where I did my undergrad, where I knew all these Black professors, where I literally helped build that department as an undergrad because it wasn't a department then and to be heartbroken. And within like, what was it, like a year and some change, I'm a producer
Yep.
on a TV show for a major streamer called HBO Max. I mean, that is insane. There's no way. And not only that, but doing my passion, which was ballroom culture,
Yep.
like
Yep.
that is absolutely there's no way. And I think about this a lot, like all the people you see in Paris is burning, Paris Dupree, Avis Pendarvis, Doreen Corey, all the mothers Pepper LaBeija, they would have never dreamed of the life that I have.
Yes. Yes. And
There's
that's part
no
of it.
way.
Yes. Yes.
It's totally part of it, of like, especially for the trans and queer listeners, we like, I think that's also part of the gratitude that we have to have
Hmm.
is that we are walking in the legacy of
Yes.
so many people who came
Yes.
before us,
Yes.
who made our lives that much easier. You
Yes.
know, we are not living in the midst of an AIDS crisis. I literally take a PrEP pill
Yep.
every day,
Yep.
you know, and the idea that it's a little pill that AIDS diagnosis, HIV diagnosis was a death sentence.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, it's really hard to put into perspective, especially because we have Pride coming up soon. But I think it's very important for folks to remember, like, literally, our paths have been bought and paid for us by so many people who are not here.
Yes.
And that's also more motivation, again, that Saturnian
This is it.
idea to do the work to make it better for the next generation and
Yes.
beyond.
Yes. And I think the final note I'll say, and then I would love to hear your plugs because we're at time here. The final thing I'll just say to that beautiful point was because our paths have been carved by others before us, it is our duty to actually honor what is intrinsic and authentic inside of us, like what is real inside of us. Like it is our duty. And duty is a great Aries word because it's military. It's like it is our duty to actually take the leap and be brave because we're doing it on the backs of so many people who probably would have killed to get that opportunity. They didn't, you know? And we have to continue that forward to the Aquarian pieces. We do it so that the future generations can also be like, wow, they did that. I can continue to move forward now in this way. And that's both a service past, service future, which I think is just so beautiful.
Mm.
Thank you, Sid. I loved all of this. I would love for you to share some things that you want to plug at the end so folks can also just get in touch with you, know what you're doing, and be up to speed with all the Aries things that you're doing.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Okay, so we have a couple of big events coming up. Obviously, Pride is around the corner, especially Dyke Day. If you're here in Los Angeles, on September, June 7th, I'm hosting the Sticky with Raw Honey NYC. This is basically a LA Dyke Day after party for BIPOC folks at Club Clio. There's going to be DJs, you know, lots of good times, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. You can check out the tickets in my bio on my Instagram at Sydney Baloue, or even Raw Honey NYC. The next day, Sunday, June 8th, 6 to 12, there is going to be King, a drag king competition that Yes Ma'am and Drag Fatal Drag Kings are doing at Club Cobra. I'll be DJing there later in the evening. So, you know, come through. DJ Medusa is also going to be DJing. It's going to be a fun time. You get to see, again, some beautiful masculinity on display. Hello.
Yes.
And
Yep.
and then I'm also really excited because Thursday, June 19th, which is Juneteenth, I'll be hosting the
Mm.
first installment of my Histories and Mysteries of Ballroom lecture series at the Philosophical Research Society.
Yes.
Um,
We love
yeah,
PRS.
I love, yeah, we love it. Shout out to Liz Vasquez. We love all the work that you guys do. So basically, it's a lecture and film series where I'll explore some of the hidden secrets and curious questions that surround ballroom culture that folks want to know about. You know, things like how do you make a ballroom bead? Did Madonna actually steal the culture? In this first lecture, I'll be talking about, you know, when does ballroom really begin? So just check out the PRS website and their socials. And then lastly, I don't know if you have any London listeners, but
I
I will
do.
be. Oh, you do? Okay,
I
great.
do. I have London listeners. Yes.
I will be in London at UCL from July 1st to the 5th, doing a week-long series around ballroom programming. I'm super excited. I'll be doing a lecture on ballroom history and a Q&A. We'll have a panel of London icons, kind of legends of the ballroom scene there, talking about their history. We're even doing a mini ball for UCL students on Friday.
Love it.
So yeah, definitely check my Instagram, like I said, at Sydney Ballou, and you can find more info there.
Yes.
So yeah.
And I will link all of this stuff in everything you send me. I'll link in the show notes for everybody to check out. So it's all there.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and then sorry, last but not least, as I mentioned, I created a playlist for folks. So like I said,
Link.
all the divas. It's so funny, Marvel, because I have this whole spiel laid out. We were going to talk about Mariah Carey. But you know, just to give a
Check her
little
out.
plug, this is the 20th anniversary of the Emancipation of Me album, which came out in April of 2005. You want to talk
During
about
Aries season. Oh my God. During
oh,
Aries
tr
season.
Oh, trust me, I saw that too. I mean, for folks who don't know, I mean, this album is so special to me just because Mariah Carey was 36 when this came out. I'm 36 right now.
Nodal.
She was
She
in
did this on her nodal return.
Note of return, first house perfection year. For folks who know, this is right after the glitter era where people felt like Mariah fell off. Emancipation of Mimi was about her rebirth. Mimi was a nickname for her close friends and family, and it was her time to show who she really is, right? Like her really redefining herself in that way. And one of the big things I'll say is I remember, Jermaine Dupri came to Penn when I was an undergrad, and he talked about how monumental this album was because it was the best-selling album of 2005, 15 million copies sold worldwide, went 6 times platinum. And truly, even though Mariah, literally the only artist ever to have a consecutive number one single hit from 1990 to 1999 of an entire decade, the Beatles, Michael Jackson, no one had ever done this. Okay. Talk about Aries.
Aries.
Diva energy, baby.
Diva. Yes.
But the thing was, emancipation of Mimi was about freedom. It was about self-definition. It was about self-determination. And it was really about her rediscovering and sharing who she was on a bigger level. If there's an album for you to listen to to get into this Neptune and Saturn and Aries energy, it is this 20th anniversary edition. And I shared with Marvel, you can check out, there's a really great article that
I'll link it in the show notes.
That Grammys.com did with the producers, Jermaine Dupri, and the other folks who worked on the album, talking about that process. Because I think, again, that's that Saturnian energy of what is the process to make your dreams come true, to really share who you truly are and tap into your authentic truth. So get into it, and I hope to see you guys soon.
Mic drop. Okay. Thank you all for listening to The World of Rex. Thank you, Sid, for being here. This was so special, and I can't wait for everybody to listen to it. If anyone has any questions for Sid or I, you can always literally ask the questions in Spotify. I will receive them. We will answer them. All right. Thank you all, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk to you next week.